Hey YouTube! Welcome back to Barefoot Baroque Cello. Today I'm going to be talking about the differences in playing a modern cello versus a Baroque cello when it comes to bow technique. I've been playing the modern cello for 13 years and I picked up the Baroque cello a little over 2 years ago, but I feel like I haven't achieved a tone that I like on the Baroque cello until just a few months ago. And as we all know, that of course has to do with our bow. This video is just talking about some things that I have learned through my own playing, but I'm just a graduate student, I'm not a professional yet. Please leave your suggestions, comments, ideas below for me, as I'm always curious to hear what the cello community has to say. So we'll get started with the modern cello, and I will explain how I use the bow. So here I am with my modern cello. I'm holding it like a Baroque cello without the end pin because I don't want to scratch the floor in my apartment, and to be honest, you don't really need one half the time anyways. So my modern cello has steel strings, which is very common with modern cellos. They are very loud and strong, and you can really beat them up a little bit and they won't fight back, unlike with gut strings. I'm sorry if you can hear my fan and if it's bothering you, that's because it's summertime in Austria with no air conditioning and it's hot. So many of you probably already know how to hold a modern bow. It's very natural, and the way my undergraduate professor always explained it to me is if you imagine you have a pencil in your hand and you ask someone to just pick it up and they pick it up like this, it's a very natural feeling. So I put my thumb right here, my fingers just drape over just like that. And it feels very natural. I can have flexible fingers, I can use my wrist back and forth. And everything comes in very smooth motions. You're trying to make circles with all of these joints that make straight lines. And an exercise that I did a lot in my undergraduate degree is this one. I'm really using a lot of my arm, I'm using the whole bow, and the whole point of this exercise is to feel the whole weight of your arm coming down onto the cello. And as I already mentioned, with steel strings, you can really beat them up. You can give them a lot of power and they will respond to it. Now that's not necessarily the prettiest sound, but it's not awful either, and steel strings can take it. So with modern technique, I really feel active in my back, shoulder, arm. Everything is active. Everything is a result of something else. Every action has to have an equal and opposite reaction. Which means that when I play a long note, you can see how far up my arm comes. Now I don't have to do that. I can keep my arm a little bit lower. Maybe it's subconscious, but the sound just isn't as strong. It doesn't sound like that cello sound that we all love to hear. So instead, to get a big sound, I'm using all of the weight of my arm, and you can even move the bow a little bit like this, just to make sure that the cello is supporting the weight of your arm instead of, I'm not pushing, it's just the weight of my arm that's down. And then when I pull, it's really a pull and a push kind of moment. And I'm just letting the weight of my arm be supported by the cello. Those are some cool harmonics. That wasn't intentional. Also in modern playing, I feel like my fingers and my wrist are a lot more flexible than in Baroque playing. So if I want to play something fast, with maybe a little bit even spiccato, or not spiccato also, my arm isn't as active as it is in Baroque playing. Instead, when I do that, I feel like most of the motion is coming from my wrist and my fingers. So here we have a Baroque baby. It's a 3/4 size cello that has been Baroqueified. I'm not sure how well you can see on the camera, but it's been through a lot. It's been through many repairs, and I think it's a great cello. I have no idea where it's from, who the maker was. There's no inside label, but I love this cello. And here's my Baroque bow. To be completely honest, I've been through many iterations of how to hold the Baroque bow. which fingers are supposed to exactly come together. How does your thumb bend work? To be honest, I found it works perfectly fine to take your regular modern bow hold and just scoot it up a little bit. Now the cool thing about my bow is it has some little grooves up on this part of the bow, so that way it's easier to hold and you don't drop it as often. I still drop my bow many times, which makes it easier to hold, especially when you're nervous and you have sweaty hands. So here's my bow hold. It's, like I said, pretty much the same thing as my modern bow hold. It's just, you scoot it up a little bit. So as I mentioned, this cello is in a Baroque setup, which means it of course has gut strings. Gut strings are extremely temperamental, and no, that's not a temperaments joke. Gut strings react a lot to the environment that they're in. They have to be kept at a certain humidity, they don't like major temperature changes, and you have to tune them much more often than you do with steel strings. But maybe that's a video for another time. Let me know if that sounds interesting. But that means that gut strings take a lot more patience to try to achieve a good tone. You can't use this same exercise that I use with my modern cello, where you just come in and try to destroy them with the weight of your arm. They don't like that, and they won't react very well, and they won't produce a good tone. Instead, the way I think of Baroque playing is to just let the instrument do what it wants. Instead of trying to be in control of the cello and show your power to the audience with how strong you are and what you can do with your magnificent bow arm, instead, I use my bow arm as a tool to let the let the cello speak for itself. Okay, so that's nice to think about. What does that actually mean in terms of technique? It took me a very long time to try to figure this out, and I'm still on my path of achieving a good tone with the Baroque cello. So, first things first, I really spend a long time practicing keeping my arm as low as possible. You'll see in a lot of iconography, and you'll read in a lot of treatises, that a lot of them talk about keeping the bow arm low. So that's in contrast to the modern playing, where we can feel a little bit more free and really use the circle of our arm. In modern playing, I always try to keep the arm close down to the body. You also need to use a lot less bow when you're playing on gut strings with a Baroque bow. I never, on Baroque playing, do exercises where I try to use the whole bow, because it just doesn't sound as good. And this whole idea of pushing and pulling is very different in Baroque playing, because we're trying to achieve the naturalness that the bow wants to give us of having a strong down bow and a weaker up bow. So when I play, I'm really just letting gravity do what it wants to do. I'm letting the cello speak, and I'm not trying to force anything out of the cello, because that's when it squeaks and when the tone doesn't sound good. At least for this current stage in my Baroque journey, I feel like when I hold the bow, I have to consciously try to keep my wrist and fingers from moving as much as I'm used to doing in Baroque playing. Because when I play fast passages, if I let my fingers be all floppy, I'll try it floppy now. You hear how much feedback there is? I'm not sure what to call it, but there's just a lot of excess noise that isn't the tone that we're going for. If I try that same thing, keeping my wrist and fingers more static and just letting my arm do all of the moving, it sounds a lot better. Now, I'm still learning, so there is still a little bit of that excess sound, but I think it sounds much better. One of the things I love the most about the Baroque cello, and what really drew me to it, is how beautiful the natural sound of the instrument does. And so I don't have to try as hard to do fancy things with my bow hold as I do with modern playing. So it's kind of like unlearning all of these things that I have to think about and keep your weight here and here. If I just take a deep breath and again let the instrument do what it wants to do, then that's how I've been getting better at creating these beautiful open string sounds. So I'm still working on this, but I'm looking in the mirror and I'm seeing that I'm really trying to keep my bow arm as low as possible. I'm trying not to move my wrist and fingers as much, and I'm still feeling the weight of my arm in the bow, of course, but it's more of a, I don't even know what to call it. You can see what I'm doing. And a cool benefit is, because of this low, relaxed arm, I think that string crossings are actually a lot easier in Baroque playing. So we all know this wonderful part of Bach. I feel like I have to move a lot less. Maybe it's because on the Baroque bridge the strings are closer together, but also it's very minute, almost microscopic kind of movements. It's very relaxed. And I just always have to tell myself when I'm playing the Baroque cello to stop trying so hard, stop thinking too much, because it never results in the sound that I'm trying so hard to create. I just have to let it happen. So I hope that was at all helpful to you. It's very strange talking to a camera instead of an actual person, so please forgive my awkwardness. Maybe I'll get better at this with time. Who knows if I'll even make another one of these. Again, please leave your comments, suggestions, ideas. Let me know what you think about the differences between Baroque and modern playing, because I would love to hear what you have to say. Thank you, and I hope you all are taking care of yourselves, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.